Listening is a complex process of selecting, attending to, creating meaning from, remembering, and responding to verbal and nonverbal messages. For example, David asks John, "Hey, did you hear me? What movie do you want to go see tonight?" The problem here isn't that John did not hear him, but rather that John did not listen to David's question. While listening is a very complex process to decipher, hearing too can be very tricky. Often at times, both listening and hearing are easily confused one for the other. When we listen, we hear words and try to make sense of what we hear. Being a good listener means to have the ability to accurately interpret messages expressed by others. Hearing is a psychological process of decoding sounds. It occurs when sound vibrations reach your eardrum and cause the middle ear bones to move. These sound vibrations are then translated into electrical impulses that reach the brain. Selective listening is the process of choosing one sound as you sort through the various sounds competing for your attention, usually focusing on the words and nonverbal messages. For example, taking this very moment for instance, you are choosing to hear this PowerPoint and ignore all the other sounds around you. Take a moment to listen to the other noise around you. Is it music, outside noise, murmuring voices, a clock ticking? All of these things that have been going on, and all the while you have been selectively listening to just my voice. In order to listen effectively, you must select which sound you will pay attention to. Attending is the process of focusing on a particular sound or message. Attending to a sound is at the very heart of the listening process. The word listen actually stems from the Middle English term lisnen, which means attention. While attention can be fleeting, it can also be selective at times, either consciously or unconsciously. People are most likely to attend to those messages that meet their needs and are consistent with their attitudes or interests. Finally, since listening is a transactional rather than a linear process, your listening skills are linked to your ability to attend to specific messages, especially during conversations when you're both talking and listening. Understanding is the process of assigning meaning to the sounds you select and to which you attend to. In order to understand a message, you must construct meaning from what you hear and what you see. There are three basic principles in knowing how to appropriately understand. One basic principle is that people understand best if they can relate what they are hearing to something that they already know. The second basic principle of understanding is that the greater the similarity between individuals, the greater the likelihood of more accurate understanding. The third basic principle is that you understand best what you also experience. The process of understanding happens when we derive meaning from the words that we hear. Remembering is the process of recalling information. Researchers theorize that you store every detail you have ever heard or witnessed. Your mind operates like a hard drive on a computer, but you cannot actually retrieve or remember all of the information. Human brains have both short-term and long-term memory storage systems. The information stored in long-term memory includes events, conversations, and other data that is significant. Responding is the process of confirming your understanding of a message. Responses can be verbal and nonverbal. Direct eye contact and head nods are other forms of responses. You can also respond verbally by asking questions to confirm the content of the message. Listening styles is your preferred way of making sense out of the messages that you hear. For example, some people prefer to focus on facts and analyze the information they hear. Others seem more interested in focusing on the feelings and emotions expressed. Knowing your listening style can help you adapt and adjust when listening to others. Researchers have found that people tend to listen using one or more of four listening skills: relational, analytical, critical, or task-oriented. Relational listeners tend to prefer listening to people's expressions of their emotions and feelings. These listeners search for common interests and seek to empathize with the feelings of others. They connect emotionally to other people. Relational listeners are also less apprehensive when communicating with others in small groups. They are sympathetic listeners and say things like, "Oh, David, I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. You must feel so sad." They are also less anxious and apprehensive about listening to others. Analytical listeners focus on facts and tend to withhold judgment before reaching a specific conclusion. Consider all the facts before making any decision or reaching a conclusion. These listeners take the perspective of the person to whom they are listening, which helps them suspend any judgment. They also organize all of the information they hear so they can clearly and easily analyze it. Critical listeners are good at evaluating the information they hear. They prefer to listen for facts and evidence to support key ideas and an underlying logic. They also listen for errors, inconsistencies, and discrepancies. These listeners tend to be more skeptical than relational listeners about the information they hear. Researchers call them skepticisms, second guessing, or questioning the assumptions underlying a message. It's called second guessing because listeners make a second guess about the accuracy of the information instead of just assuming its relevance right off the bat. Task-oriented listeners are interested in focusing more on achieving a specific outcome or accomplishing a task than on focusing on the communication relationship when they listen to others. They empathize and try to solve problems and take action. These listeners focus on verbs, on what needs to be done. They don't prefer to listen to rambling, descriptive messages that they don't really have a point. Task-oriented listeners appreciate efficient communicators who are sensitive to how much time is involved in delivering a message. They want to do something with the information they hear and want to serve a purpose. They also become impatient with information that doesn't have a bottom line. Underlying listening styles. There are 3 reasons to give some thought to your listening style and the listening styles of others. First, knowing your own listening style can help you adapt and adjust to the listening situation. Second, it is important to understand that you may have more than one listening style. Research suggests that females are more likely to be relational listeners, whereas males have a tendency to assume one of the other listening styles. Lastly, it can be useful to be aware of the listening styles of others so you can communicate messages that are more likely to listen to.